Hey everyone, and welcome to Writing Our Way Out the podcast. On this show, we explore all the conditions, traps, and turning points on the path to prison in America and the way to be free.
Mhm.
Today's episode, Locked Up. After you get caught by the police, you get locked up. Right or wrong, guilty or not, you go to jail. There you have to figure out how to live with all these other people and the ones in charge, the ones keeping you locked up. Is that possible? What do you do to keep the peace? And what can the ones in charge do? With us today on the show is one of the authors of Writing Our Way Out, Memoirs from Jail, Stan Craddock. That book came out of the writing workshop that we began at the jail together. Stan, you remember those old days back in the old city jail?
I certainly do. I certainly do. Life-changing days, Dave.
Life-changing days for both of us. And he was there at the
Yeah.
same time. We didn't always see him in the class, but he was definitely a part of the old Richmond City Jail. With us on the show tonight is Mr. William Burnett from the Richmond City Sheriff's Office. Stan and I know him as Colonel Burnett during C.T. Woody's term as sheriff, and now he's a candidate for sheriff. Welcome to the show, Colonel Burnett.
Thank you for having me, and I hope I can bring some insight to your show tonight. And I've always had great respect for both of you guys. Y'all did some great things on both ends of the spectrum when I was there. So I'm happy to be here, and like I said, I hope I can bring some insight to what's going on.
I definitely think you are going to do exactly that. Stan, I think it's going to be hard for me not to call him Colonel Burnett. How about you?
That's the Colonel. That's Colonel Burnett. Hopefully we can call him Sheriff.
That's right.
Yes, sometime soon. All right, so today we're going to take a look at all the things that go on in jail through some of the stories about jail from Writing Our Way Out. Colonel Burnett, I think you're going to recognize this first story. You might not know it as a story in the book, but it's something that Stan put into the book. And it's a story about keeping the peace on the tier. And it's something that he experienced from his side of the bars. So I'm going to read that little bit from the story and ask the both of you to help me break it down. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay. I drift off to sleep. A few hours later, I hear something so profound in my spirit that immediately I realized I am being summoned. The blood cries out. It's running down his chest. He's fighting a battle that he can't possibly win. There are pit bulls all around him, ferocious and brutal animals disguised like men. Their forceful blows hit their mark, but the real danger comes only from one man. Gripped in his hand is a homemade knife. With each blow comes a piercing wound, allowing the precious wine of his life to be poured into that huge glass beneath our feet, the chilled, hard concrete floor. Men are lapping it up with their eyes. His wine, the very essence of his life, is crying out for help. But who is in tune to such a frequency? Who can hear words that are not formulated in English, but in a language that only our hearts can decode?
Mhm.
How many of us are in tune with the frequency of our own hearts, let alone someone else's? Life can be very selfish as we go on caring about our own needs. Why did I get up and help this young man at the risk of being beaten or stabbed myself? This wasn't a battle that the best of us could win, but I was summoned by a force greater than my own understanding, a God of love, a God that heard the blood cry out. God used me that night because God knew that if he summoned me, I would obey. Now, I'm not known for being anyone's hero, but you can't have God's love and find only one person to share it with. That's
Mhm.
selfish love, not God's love. For God so loved the world, there it is. He loves all of us. This is God pouring his spirit into us. We are just the vessels for his fruitful drink. Stop! This is wrong, I yelled. You gonna kill him right here? Then what? And the whole situation changed. That night on the tier, I became a leader. You see, I understand that young man's words. He passed out from the loss of so much blood and was taken to the hospital. As for those who committed the brutal act, the guy who had the weapon caught a new charge. As for me, I took hits from snipers afterwards. Things subsided long enough for the next storm to brew, because when the administration removed those 4 men, they brought in 10 new guys with 10 different personalities to add to the 150 of us already stuck on the tier. I'll stop it there. I'll stop it there. Yeah. So, um, Colonel Burnett, you didn't know Stan was reflecting and writing about all that back there, did you?
No, had no clue at all. I knew Stan was, like he said, was one of the leaders in the group. That if I had to know something or needed some information that was going to save somebody from doing further harm, I knew I could count on certain people, and I knew Stan was one of the people. So he was the type of guy when he was there that made a difference. Unfortunate he was there in that situation, but he also made a difference in how we operated there, because of course we when we came on the pod, most situations were either done already, or either I came in and in the midst of it and everything split up or separated. But it was guys like Stan that gave me the and people call it snitching in jail, but it wasn't snitching. It was about saving somebody, possibly saving somebody's life in a situation like this right here was. So we needed people like Stan. We needed people that would stand up guys, that would stand up for not to be called no snitch, but for right and wrong. And that was one of the things that I truly had a care for Stan and an understanding and a respect for him.
Mhm. Can I ask you to speculate a little further? What are the root causes of violence like that? He didn't explain that in the story, and I'm sure that you've seen other stories like that or other incidents where violence comes out. Like you said, it's a done deal when you have to figure out what to do now. But what are the root causes of violence in jail, and how can it be stopped? I'm going to start with you, and then I want Stan to chime in on that.
Yeah, it's a multitude of things, and it's about for some guys, it's about respect. For some guys, it's about power. For some guys, it was about control. Some guys were just vicious people. And we had a lot of that last piece was just being vicious. Some guys just wanted to victimize people. And, I was the type of guy, when I came in, I took a hands-on approach. First thing I did was go to Rikers Island, was one of the most violent facilities in the country. And I found out how they turned their program around, what they did, put structure in place. And then I came back to the Richmond Sheriff's Office, and Stan can verify this. When we first took over, it was no lines on the floor. It was no talking in the hallway. It was a free fall. And it was a dangerous environment. Stan can tell you, like I say, over and over again, because he's seen it, he lived it, and he taught it. But it was a dangerous environment. So when I came back, the first thing I did after going to Rikers Island, they gave me all these tips and know-hows and all the structure. The guys thought I was hardcore. They thought I was mean. But this was about really saving somebody's life, just like Stan. If I hadn't have taken a hands-on approach and took control of that facility, it would have been more stories like Stan telling you about right now. So it was a multitude of things. Like I say, it was just I want to be in control. My gang is stronger than your gang. And it ain't really no real gangs in Richmond, to be honest. It's a lot of people that group together and call themselves gangs. It was a lot of the young kids, really young boys out there on the street, that because they hung in Mosby Court, they was a Mosby gang. If they were the Brickyard boys, because they was in Gilpin Court. But it was really just a bunch of out of control youth that didn't have that structure, didn't have that discipline, didn't have that control. And that was the piece that I had to step in as a colonel and put that in place. And they weren't used to it. And because they weren't used to it, I became the villain. I became the bad guy. I was the mean person. But it was people like Stan that understood, saw what I was doing. Even back then, you know, a lot of guys see me today and they say, you know, I didn't know what you were doing back then. But one guy sent me something the other day and said, you know what, you saved my life, whether you knew it or not.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, how did I save your life? You know, and he went into some details and I took it for granted that this was just my job. And not that the things that I was actually doing was making a serious difference. And it was with the grace of having people like Stan that I could refer to, that I could talk to, that I can communicate with, that we made a serious difference. It's not just on the of the administrative side. It had a lot to do on the inmate side or the resident side, whatever they called it back then. But it was that working partnership and that relationship that we had that I built with people like Stan that made a difference in people going home the same way they left.
Right.
Stan can fill in and
Yeah, I want to hear what Stan has to say about that. Go ahead.
Well, I think first of all, we sat back and watched TV at that particular time when Woody's administration came in and Colonel Burnett came in. There was a challenge about letting them in with Miss Mitchell. Miss Mitchell didn't want to give up the jail. When I met Colonel Burnett, I wasn't real sure, right, about his motives as well as his techniques. But one thing I did learn, that man, he's a quiet man, but he means everything that he says. I respected the fact when Colonel Burnett came in and took all the young dudes, the vast majority of young guys, and put them on the floor and put the older guys in beds. I respected that. You know, I never had a problem with getting a bed, but other guys had a problem getting a bed. Colonel Burnett, Sheriff Woody was the administrator. He was the face. But Colonel Burnett was the hand. he was definitely the hand. And when he came in, you know, everybody paused. Everybody paused. He was fair. He was fair in discipline. He was fair in every aspect. I find it interesting because he came from the Richmond Police Department, and you can do certain things in the Richmond Police Department, but when you come to the Richmond City Jail, there's got to be some resocialization there. Mm-hmm. You have to change your approach. Mm-hmm. And apparently, they came up with a structure, a plan, and they implemented it. The difference between the Justice Center and the Richmond City Jail is the Justice Center supplies a certain amount of security based on the structure. Mm-hmm. The Richmond City Jail did not provide security so far as the structure.
Yeah. You agree with what Colonel Burnett said about the root causes of the disturbances, the violence, and the fighting? It could be respect or pride, control, that kind of stuff. You want to add to that?
I agree with that. It could be a smorgasbord of different reasons. When I was down there, a lot of guys that they need to feel like they're somebody, right? But not individually. They gather their strength. They gather their strength in clusters of groups. Like you said, the Brickyard Boys, Jackson Ward. You know, I was from the West End, but I never put the West End in front of Stan. I'm Stan Craddock. I've been to California, been in that jail. I was Stan Craddock. But I did see that guys would cluster up together and create havoc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. and that's what I was referring to in the beginning of keeping the peace. I guess like Colonel Burnett, like you're saying, some people are just vicious and they want to create havoc. That they get off on that. But I think the majority of the people that I've met, the people that I met in this writing class that Stan was a part of, they're not like that. You know, they want to do something positive with their time. They're not trying to get in anybody else's way. Um, I want to, if I can I read you another a bit from the book that gets into that of how people do their time?
Sure. And I'd like to just piggyback on something you just said.
Yes, of course.
Same mentality out in the community. When you talk about Wickham Court, Creighton Court, Fairfield Court, all those courts, the overall majority of those people are good people. It's just a small percentage that come in and try to make the area bad for everybody, or they get the reputation of being bad because of a few. But in the jail, same thing, just like you said, the overall majority of those guys want to come and do their time. But you get, like Stan said, those young, small clusters of people, and that's where they get their strength from. Like Stan said, they get their strength from being in groups, jumping on people in groups, creating fear and intimidation in groups. Then you get these guys separated. That's why one of the things, I think that time when we talked just a few minutes ago, when I had that group of guys out and I was in the hallway, probably what I was doing at that time was breaking up groups. Because every time they got comfortable, I'd shift them around again.
Move them around.
And that was a strategy with keeping them in keeping discipline and structure in that part.
Yeah, let me just refresh the memory, because I know we shared that, and Stan and I talked about that moment a while back. But for listeners who don't know, one of my first memories of meeting Colonel Burnett was walking to class in the old city jail, and my guide, Mr. John Dooley, told me to stop, and he's a big guy, so when John says stop, you just stop. Where he says, "Come on, hold up," and we saw ahead of us Colonel Burnett with I remember maybe 20 or so men standing in a couple rows, standing straight up, kind of like a military posture, and he was walking around them, kind of reviewing them and saying little things. It wasn't a lot of yelling. There wasn't any acting out. It was like, what the heck is going on here? This is intense. And then John later explained to me who you were and what you were what your job was. He didn't tell me what you were doing, but I'm glad to hear what you were explaining now. Like if guys are drawing strength on their ability to click up, and then bounce on somebody, you want to kind of intervene in there. So
he diluted right much up in there. He diluted.
Yeah. Well, so one of the ways they can draw their strength is that way. But like we're saying, the majority are not about that. They want to do their time. They want to get in and out the way they came in. They want to deal with their own issues. And one of the things that I was impressed upon, it really impressed me, was that when you get a group of men who really care like that together, the possibilities are endless.
True.
Because the passion for learning, and I can tell you, most of my all of my colleagues, and anybody I've brought into the Richmond City Sheriff's Office who've seen these classes and participated, and I think this is true for people who volunteer at other jails, they come away amazed that students could be this passionate about learning.
They're hungry, Dave.
They're hungry. Yeah, they're really hungry. So I want to read you a story. This is just a little dramatization of it, and then I want to kind of segue from that into asking you all what you think is the real foundation of that hunger for learning. This is a piece from Andre Simpson from the book. I don't think it's set in the Richmond City Jail. I think it's set in the Department of Corrections in Virginia. Here's what he says. Coming to prison for the second time, I knew that drama was the number one thing. Prison is designed to make you prove yourself or fail. I seen a guy get shanked up once, forceful hits to the man's body. They penetrated him so hard I could actually hear the blade hit the concrete behind him. Seeing a man get stabbed to death is totally different from seeing a guy get shot or me shooting a guy. Maybe it's the prison environment, but it made me wise up. I then took a look at myself. my inner self and the inner beast in me. And that was the day my blinders came off.
Mm.
Man got killed right there in the day room because he turned on the TV. He just turned on the TV. There's different rules in prison than in jail. And when you violate one, you just might pay for it with your life. I was playing by the wrong set of rules. So I started anticipating the good that I might enjoy in life. I started applying optimism and spending quality time with my family, friends, and loved ones in visits and in letters. It was time for me to unlock the vault inside of me that held all of my hidden treasures and talents. It was time to bring my life into balance. Drug using and drug selling are heavy in prison, just like on the street. But I said no more. I was reading books now. I had Maya Angelou poems, James Patterson, and my Bible. The door to my vault was opening. He goes on to describe some of the programs that he joined, GED, Breaking Barriers. I forgot the names of all of them, but he talked about those as like really life changing. They gave his energy a focus, and they gave him a sense of empowerment. Um, so, Colonel Burnett, I was wondering if I could ask you, in all the years you've uh, been working in the sheriff's office, as you look back at the different programs you've seen and the different ways that guys have spent their time, maybe even building their own programs, what do you think is really at the core of what works in program?
You know, I will tell you, one of the programs that I really enjoyed, um, and it's many. I tell you, when John them graduated more GEDs in the jail than the entire Richmond Public School, that was amazing. That was amazing. I would tell you that we as administrators, as politicians, future and politicians, you got to think out the box. And what I've never been is one for throwing out numbers, 450 programs with no substance behind them, nothing that you can touch, feel, or see. You know, I've always been that type. That's why I think that I was successful at Richmond City Sheriff's Office by reducing the assaults and violence in the jail, because I was a hands-on type guy. I had to touch it, I had to see it, I had to feel it. And those are the types of program I think affected more people in jail than anything. And I'll give you an example is father-daughter dance. You have to use every tool in the box. And I think using, unfortunately, having in that environment, but having a child come and see their father in a facility dressed up, looking cute, and father, that tugs on your heart. Because see, I know for me, when I became a father, my life changed. You know, I had to look at things differently. I quit going out and having fun and spending money. So it changes your life. And I think that father-daughter program made a difference with a lot of those guys, because it was a tool that we use in the jail to change a mindset and utilizing that child and giving him that connection with that child to understand that, hey, you need to be outside and not inside the jail, but home with your child, making sure that cycle don't continue. Because, you know, a cycle can continue with females as well as males. But you need to be home with your family. So I would tell you, that was that was a program that I could touch it, I can see it, I can feel it. And it was nothing that I had to say, well, the AG's office gave me $500,000, and then you never know where that money went to, or you never see no results behind it, or you don't see no tangible results behind it. And that was something that I really found touching when I saw that. It made you tear up, actually, seeing that the kids coming in there with their father and they dancing, and then it made them tear up, because although I know I'm a realist, I knew we couldn't save everybody, But say having that one father that said, you know what, I got to be back out in here in the public, in the community with my child to make sure that she has a better opportunity, better chances, and that structure that you needed. And it made a huge difference. So I'm always been for those types of programs that I can touch and see and feel, and I can see results from it. And that's one of the programs that Angela Patton that we partnered with came in and brought to the Richmond. And of course, it went national. It went across the country. It made CNN, the Steve Harvey show. It went national. And then it went outside of the jail, and we just started doing regular father-daughter dances. So, you know, those are the types of programs I think that makes the most difference, you know, the differences in people's lives. You got to use every tool in the box. And that was just thinking out of the box right there. And that's what I'm going to be about when I do become sheriff. I'm going to think out of the box. The sheriff department is going to be a resource to the community and not a warehouse for inmates or residents or whatever we want to call them. But it has to be a resource. And that's what I'm going to push for when I get in that tangible resource.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Dave, can I chime in, Dave?
Yes, of course.
Colonel Burnett only spoke about the father and daughter program. Under his leadership, as well as Sheriff Woody, they established, well, we owe them for the book, you know, because they allow VCU to come in.
That's true.
They also established the real program, which has reentry houses right now, maybe 10 reentry houses, or working their way to 10. There's certainly over 6.
That's right.
You know, and surely this affects the recidivism rate. This gotta affect the recidivism rate. I read on the back of a Open Minds T-shirt, it says changing college to change incarceration. So there's a partnership there. There's a partnership. If it said that it takes a community to raise a child, where it takes a corporation to raise a community. And I agree with Colonel Burnett. We have to go outside of the box, simply because if nothing changes, nothing changes.
And I'm glad Stan brought that up, because it was a number of other programs in there. Even the Belief program. When we first started out, big success. The GED program, huge success. I couldn't imagine the number of GEDs we were graduating there yearly versus what Richmond Public Schools was doing in the community. The real program, like Stan talked about, they are up to about 10 houses. These are all tangible programs that made a difference. They affected people's lives, and they made a difference, that things that you could see results from. And that's what I'm about. You know, I got to see the results. You can't throw no numbers out at me and say, well, we got $450,000 from the AG's office. It's good. Believe me, we need the money. But show me what measurements came from it. Show me what results came from it. How many people did we actually save? How did we reduce the recidivism? I want to see all those things. I know the programs that Stan talked about and the programs that I talked, results came from that. Because like I say, when you graduate more GEDs than entire Richmond Public Schools, that's a result. When you get out, you take your program from the Richmond City Jail, the real life program, into the community, and within probably less than 3 years, you got already 10 houses that you helping people that come from jail to get a better start. Those are results. Those are tangible results. And that's, like I say, that's going to be the big thing that I push. And not on that. I talked to Stan a little bit about it. I don't want to get too much on
the bounce back program.
That's what I was getting ready to talk about.
Us.
Yeah, I didn't want to get on the political side, but I do want to tell you about the bounce back program that I'm creating. And the name Bounce Back came from a friend of mine who did year after year after year after year after year in the North Carolina jails. But then he turned his life around, got his own trucking company that's doing well. Been out for about, now I would say about 15 so years, doing good. I'm going to create that's the name that I got from him because he had it on his license plate. That's the name of my program, Bounce Back. I'm going to give ex-offenders the opportunity to bounce back from a bad situation and work for the Richmond City Sheriff's Office. I'm going to work, they're going to work in my community relations unit. Yeah, not saying they're carrying guns and that kind of stuff, but they're going to be the voice. They're going to be the vision. They're going to be the ambassadors to the community. But at the same time, me hiring, I'm also going to partner with a number of other agencies and individuals, not just agencies, because we got to get away to thinking that only agencies can make a difference. Individuals can make a difference. So sure. I'm gonna partner with a lot of those people out in the community. And at the same time, me partnering, I'm gonna ask them to hire people too. If me being the chief law enforcement officer in the city of Richmond, I can reach out, I can give people an opportunity to bounce back, then I want people in the community to do the same thing. So that's what I'm gonna push partnershiping with out there in the community. So I'm glad you brought that up, Stan, but that's called Bounce Back. That's one of my goals as the next sheriff of the city of Richmond.
That's a dynamic idea. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that.
No doubt.
As it develops. But so many guys like Stan I've met over the years come out and they have exactly that vision. They want to contribute. They want to be a part of the solution. They've learned a whole lot about themselves and about human nature from whatever it is, education. You mentioned the REAL program, that's recovering from everyday addictive lifestyles, led by Dr. Sarah Scarborough, an amazing success story. But there's a whole bunch of these programs that we know work. And at the core of it, I think, is this belief in people forming community and taking control of their destiny. It can happen. It can happen. Is there anything else you want to share about the bounce back program idea that how it would work inside the jail like these other programs? I mean, I heard the community relations side on the outside. It would be classes inside, or
it's going to actually play two dual roles. It's going, because I'm creating for the first time ever in the history of the sheriff's office, it's going to be a new division called the Office of Inmate Advocacy. It will be run by civilians advocating on the rights of individuals, internal and external. It'll also be a portion of what that bounce back, that when you get out there in the community and things don't go exactly the way you think they should, you can call back to the sheriff's office and it's going to be a resource through the Office of Inmate Advocacy. We're going to push that program, and like I say, they will advocate on all rights. If you're in jail and your family member called and they said, I heard that they got COVID is running rampant, you won't be bounced around all over the jail trying to reach somebody. You will call the Office of Inmate Advocacy, and that person is going to give an answer for you. If it's your canteen it didn't turn out right, you'll call the Office of Inmate Advocacy. You're going to have a direct resource to call to find out and get answers. But the thing about that too is I'm also creating a civilian review board that will report directly to me about problems that's going on. That will be through the Office of Inmate Advocacy. And if the officer goes out and shoots somebody, they'll see all the evidence, the resources and everything. They'll have access to it as well as I will. And then they'll make a recommendation to me. But all of this is part of the whole setup of the external, internal resourcing. That bounce back program, it's gonna like I said, it's not just organizations, it's going to be individuals. So if somebody says that they're leaving jail and they have an interest in, I'm gonna partner with a mechanic. It might be a person that has a mechanic shop, might be a person that has an electrician shop, might be somebody that I can release them to, that knowing that they got somewhere to go and an opportunity, put it that way. But if it don't work out like you think it should, you got somebody to call back to. It ain't that we just throw you out of jail with no resources. You get out there, we're gonna set you up in the right direction. And then it's always gonna be that resource that you can call back to and say, hey, the job didn't work out for whatever reason. I'm still out here without home or with a place to live. I need some more help. And you got that person that you're gonna be able to reach back to. So that bounce back is gonna fold into 3 or 4 different things, even a youth program. And that youth program is going to be about starting early middle school. But I'm gonna create a boot camp, because first thing they need to be is they got to get the structure, they got to get that discipline, they got to get all the things, that tough love that they're gonna need. When they graduate from that boot camp, they go into a long-term mentorship program. That long-term mentorship, you know, if you want to go to college, you want to go to the military, you want to go just into job. Well, we're going to help you get there in stages. Every grade level you move to, you're going to change to a different coordinator. That coordinator is going to have to keep your attention while you're there. It may be technology, it may be athletics, it may be a whole array of things. But as you move in the direction the way you want to be long term, because remember, most programs, they put you in these mentorships, they throw you out there after 6 months and hope you do well. My program gonna follow you all the way to college. And what I hope to do is partner with teachers in the community that can help you get a better SAT score. I hope to partner with someone from the military to help you get a high score on the ASVAB test, because it determines what you're going to do in the military. And if you go into a job in infantry, after you get out, what do you have? Infantry is good, but I'd rather have a computer science background that I can come back out in the community and start doing something more productive. So we're gonna guide them and get them in the direction, but it's long term, from middle school all the way till you graduate. Now, that's gonna be a big push, because I want that to be a standalone program, standalone, a separate building away from the jail. And I want them to be able to stay in the boot camp program overnight. Your parents can sign you up. Judges can use this as alternative to sentencing, because we want to keep the kids out of the system. We want to keep them out. And so judges can use this as an alternative. Hey, you either do this program or then you have to face me again.
So Stan, can you interject there, if I may? How would you have worked in that program if you had access to bounce back when you were still doing time?
I'm bouncing back now, Dave.
That's right. He gonna be part of it now.
Yeah. Well, let me share this with you, right? New growth, right? A diversion program. Writing your way out, we partnered with Mike Hearn and created a diversion program under Judge McClenny. I think that if I'm going to build a house, before I build a house, I got to dig the footing. If I'm going to pour some concrete, right, I gotta form it up first, right? And so I agree with the structure all the way. If you don't lay the first course right, then it won't grow. It's gonna get off. And the higher you go up, the further the inconsistencies will be. One thing I do know about you is that if you say you're gonna do something, you're gonna do it. One thing I want to point out is that the Richmond sheriff, running for sheriff doesn't mean just the jail. That's man, it goes from warrants down. It's the sheriff department. It's the sheriff department. So this is an important election. Yes, this is an important election, and I really would tell people, right? Just don't get familiar with a person's face or their name, but actually use social media or use technology to research. I truly believe that redemption. You know, Brian Stephen wrote a book called Just Mercy. And we need to show some mercy and stop being so desensitized in dealing with people. All sentences, some are fair, and I like what Woody said. Woody said that there's only a small percentage of violent offenders. There's only a small percentage. So yes, prison is needed. Prison is needed for that small percent. But you have repeat offenders that have drug problems, right? And they wouldn't be committing crimes if they didn't have a drug issue. So we have to start looking at the core, of what their issues is, and be willing to confront and create and give opportunities. I don't believe in warehousing. I really don't believe in warehousing. I believe that you should give an opportunity. Now you can put everything on the table. You can put all of these programs on the table. My responsibility, right, is I need to choose. I need to choose that. And your responsibility is to make available the option. And so I certainly agree with you, Colonel.
Sheriff C.T. Woody said a few other things I want to get in there because he had a lot of wisdom from his time in that job. And the other one that you guys both reminded me of is he said, the jail is in the community and the community is in the jail. I heard him say that more than once. And that kind of strikes to what you're talking about in Bounce Back, that people are going to return to the community and they need guides to help them get through that process. But just the same way, I mean, the people in the community might end up in the jail. And so it's good to have that two-way street of the dialogue of how we're all going to get through this together. Because the whole point of a jail is to keep public safety. We ought not be incarcerating. This is another thing C.T. Woody told me in front of my students a number of times that always stuck with me. He said, you're all about to come in here, you're going to do your class, you're going to meet a lot of people. 2/3 of the people that you meet, and well, no, he didn't say that you're going to meet. 2/3 of the people in this jail, I can tell you right now, don't belong here. He said a half to 2/3, maybe that's what he said, a half to 2/3 really don't belong here. We should be locking up the people that we're truly afraid of, not the ones that we're just angry with. Right. And then what I took from that was like, yeah, you might be angry at the person with the drug issue who keeps, petty theft here and there. You might be angry at the person who can't pay their bills and they're stuck in there because they're paying restitution. There's a lot of reasons you can get angry at somebody. But in any event, that takes me to the last story. It's a short one. It's about coming back into the community and what all this work does. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read you one little last bit here from another one of Stan's co-authors, and we can talk about what we can expect from people coming out of the jail after they've gone through a program like this. This is a bit from Ronald Fountain. It comes in the end of the book, and it's about his time when he was released from prison. He says here, after 14 long months, I hear my name being called, and I quickly grab my things. I travel to the mess hall where a sergeant is waiting to receive me. This is my final walk to freedom. My excitement is mounting. I'm given a pair of brown slacks and a brown shirt to put on. The voice in my head says, my past is done and will not change. But today is my present, a gift from my creator, and my future is not yet set. Stay in today. Make positive choices so tomorrow will be brighter. Let's go on and take on the world. I take my last breaths of confinement and gaze at the fences of sharp steel that have been daring me to cross them. Then I say goodbye forever. The gate is opened and the officer allows me to walk through without him following. I wish you well, and I hope you never come back, he says seriously. Thanks. And you take care too, and remember, we're not all criminals, I say over my shoulder. And I love that ending line, we're not all criminals, because it's something that really, I think there's a lot of people when they think of jail or prison, they just think, oh, they all must be criminals and they all belong there. And then the worst of their imagination takes over. they're all violent, like the kinds of stories we heard in the beginning of the show, or they're all people that don't deserve a second chance. They're all people with no talents or nothing redeeming about them. But when you label somebody a criminal, you kind of prevent their humanity from coming out. And so I wanted to ask both of you as we kind of wind down on the show there about that last part. If your identity can be bigger than that label, it raises the question: why do we put so many people in jail under that label? And do you think there's a way we could put less people in jail?
I would say one of the biggest things is one of the biggest problems with everything you just said is just about society in itself. You know, how society see individuals, how we just, I mean, everything you were saying, how we label people. You know, we don't believe, a lot of people don't believe in second chances, you know, and that's unfortunate. You know, I ain't saying everybody. I think we've come a long way now that more and more people are starting to understand that you can't lock the problem away. People will return back to the community. Now, do we want them to come back to the community as a better citizen, or do we want them to come back as a better victimizer? And I think I made a word up, like, but I like that word. But, yeah, but if you allow people, because I didn't want to use the word a better criminal. I've heard other people say a better criminal, but when you victimize people, because a lot of times it's because you don't have options. And I'm not saying that I agree with what Stan said 100%. Jail is needed for certain individuals. And I think it's needed for those violent type offenders, those offenders that just won't commit to saying that, you know, enough is enough. But I will tell you that we as a society, and Sam said something else that I keyed in on, we so sensitive to everything that we want to feel but not say. You know, we've been backed into a corner that says that, you know, it's okay for you to say something, but if I say it, I'm labeled as a racist, I'm labeled as homophobic, I'm labeled as all kinds of things. I mean, people are scared to say anything these days, how they feel and how their concerns are. But I will say this, that if we don't, as a society, learn to give people chances, and that's all it is, that's all it's about, is giving opportunity. We don't educate, reach out. You know, I have a huge Latino following in my campaign. And one of the things they asked, I asked them as I met with them on a number of occasions, and they said, I said, well, as sheriff, what can I do? You know, I know what I can do for everybody, but they are even on the further back end of things. And I asked them, I said, well, they told me the first thing they want is, they love their country. It's just that they want a better lifestyle for their family. And when they told me that, my whole plan of thought with my campaign, you know, changed. My theme went to building a better family. That's where I started focusing my attention on, how do I build a better family? But then I decided that one, I'm gonna have to, big thing is use the sheriff, not as at the sheriff department. I think a lot of law enforcement agencies across the country are not using maximizing, I'll put it that way, not maximizing what they can do in the community. It's too late to, you know, a lot of people are big on these community walks. I'm not big on them, and I'm not, and the vigils and all that kind of, I'm not big on them, because it tells me that I'm coming in after the fact.
Agreed.
I've come in now that the little girl and her daughter was killed, the young lady and her daughter was killed, and now I'm gonna go walk in the community for 30 minutes and get up and say a few speeches, and then I'm gonna leave those people to the mercies of what's going on in the community. It has done absolutely nothing. What I want to see done is the sheriff department being that resource, is being in the community before things happen. I want that neighborhood to say, well, hey, the sheriff department was already out here working with us before the shooting happened. when Jerry Oliver was chief of police, he put us directly in Mosby Court as a unit, called it the Mosby Court unit. And I stayed out there day and night for a solid year. And I became a resource to that neighborhood. Calls for service dropped, shootings dropped. If it was an incident gonna happen in that neighborhood, I knew before it happened because I built that relationship. And that's where I think that we need to focus a lot of our attention when we're talking about the question you gave, that we have to be a resource, but not only a resource, but we have to put our money where our mouth is. We got to get out in the neighborhood, be seen, be heard, because we've had this huge separation due to all of these shootings and things that's going on between law enforcement and community. Community police, being honest, community policing is dead right now. And the only way to build that back is you got to get in the community. As sheriff, my office is going to be in the community. That's where I will be. As sheriff, my command staff will be in the community. My junior staff will be the one that's running the jail and doing the day-to-day operations. But my staff, my command staff, and myself, our office is going to be in the community. And every trouble area, we're not going to profile crime, we're going to profile criminal activity. Criminal activity meaning where the people need us the most. If it's Mosby Court, then I'm gonna have a relationship with Mosby Court, but I'm not gonna forget the rest of the city. And I promise the people in Windsor Farm, you're gonna be a day that you're gonna come out here in these nice, big, pretty houses y'all have, and I'm gonna set up a tent, and I'm gonna put out flyers, and I'm gonna tell people, come meet the sheriff. And I'm gonna have a cookout right there on the big fields in them open areas. And I'm gonna do different things. I'm gonna think out of the box, but that's what we have to do as leaders in all organizations, especially when it comes to law enforcement. You got to reach out, you got to educate, you got to be a resource, you got to give that strict discipline when it's done, when it's needed. But if we don't get back out there and start talking, then we might as well look to what's going on. But I've never been and I say this again, never been a fan of going into a community, walking for 30 minutes after the incident done happened, and then I'm gone, and then they back out there at the mercy of what's going on in their neighborhood. I don't put no resources in.
Hey, Stan, I want to give you a crack at that question too before we close out the show.
Well, I wanted to say this first of all, right? That if there's a temperate storm and I'm a captain, all hands on deck. Everybody, I need everybody, right? Because we're going through a storm. We're going through a temporary storm. And I think that's what Colonel Burnett just said, all hands on deck. We have to utilize all these tools that are available to us, right? When we was at VCU, there was a whole classroom of professors that was saying, what can we do? What can we do to share? Cornel West said that after you get your degree, you're gonna use it for yourself, but then you're gonna find your purpose and understand that your degree is to help someone else. Mm-hmm. I think Colonel Burnett has a hard job. I think he has a hard job, but I think he's more than willing to assemble a foundation, and to get that foundation, to get the assembly of his administration to dig the footing, to lay the first course of this. I've truly enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed listening to the Colonel. I think that we do have to think outside of the box. We do. Jail is not long-term housing, period. It's temporary housing. So the long-term housing is penitentiary. Those are the people that we're scared of. Those are the people, right, that we do need off of the street. But everybody else, we owe them. We owe them. We owe them our education. We owe them our love. We owe them our sense of to be sensitive. it's interesting because I can take a car, my car can start making a funny noise, and I can take it to AutoZone, and they'll put the first thing they're going to do is put it on the computer, right? And some of the computer will diagnostic. It will tell you what the issues. Okay, when the people are crying out, we have psychologists, we have sociologists, we have professors, we have criminologists, we have all of these people, right? So let's utilize them to make the diagnostic, to do the diagnostic part. If you go to Mosby Court after a killing and you say, hey, listen, we want you to tell, hey man, you too late. You're too late. You should have been in Mosby Court building the relationship so that the people would understand that you're a solution, not a problem.
I like the way that sounds. I like the solutions we've come up with here tonight. I like the brainstorming. I really hope we can continue this. And I want to thank you, Colonel Burnett, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight. I want to thank you, Stan, for being with us again, for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Dave.
If any of you out there listening, you want to learn more about Colonel Burnett, you can go to William Burnett for Sheriff RVA.org.
Please do.
If you want to learn more about Writing Our Way Out the podcast, you can go to writingourwayout.com. You can also hear the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you go there, I hope you'll subscribe and leave a review. We would love to hear from you. You can email me, Dave Coogan, directly from the website. You can also follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. The theme music for Writing Our Way Out the podcast is written and produced by Chris Coogan. You can learn more about him at cooganmusic.com. The show is produced by Rob Crocker, PhD student in Media Art Text at Virginia Commonwealth University, and assisted by his faithful team of interns from the Robertson School of Media and Culture. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Writing Our Way Out the podcast.